The flash went off and the world paused, suspended in silver light. In that frozen instant stood David Hemmings, the restless soul of London's swinging 60s. The boy with the camera, the man who caught truth by accident, the face that became the decade's reflection. Through Antonioni's blow-up, he turned stillness into story, fashion into philosophy. He wasn't acting, he was observing, dissecting, questioning the meaning behind every image. The camera worshipped him, but in return, it took something vital, the anonymity that lets a man breathe. When the decade dimmed and the noise receded, the icon vanished too. He had embodied youth, rebellion, freedom, and when the world moved on, there was no frame left for him to live in. The boy who once defined modernity found himself staring into silence, a man out of time and out of focus. There was nothing predictable about David Hemmings. He didn't rise through the studio system or charm his way up red carpets. He simply appeared a storm in a perfectly tailored suit, a voice of a generation that didn't yet know what it wanted to say. Born in Guildford in 1941, he was a choir boy long before he became a film icon. As a child, he sang for composer Benjamin Britten, his voice a pure note in a wounded post-war world. When that voice broke, so did the certainty of his path. But somewhere between silence and ambition, the boy discovered the screen. Then came Blow Up, the turning point that turned art into obsession. Under Michelangelo Antonioni's direction, Hemmings became a symbol of youth's cold fascination with truth. The role of Thomas, the photographer who sees what no one else can, captured everything about the era: beauty, emptiness, desire, and the quiet despair beneath it. For a few years, Hemmings was London, sharp, restless, magnetic. But symbols don't grow old gracefully. The decade that created him began to vanish, and the man inside the myth had nowhere left to stand. When the camera turned away, what remained was not a star but a survivor. Long before the world knew his name, David Hemmings was simply a boy whose voice filled empty churches. Born into modest beginnings, he found his earliest calling not on stage but in song, chosen by Benjamin Britten himself to perform in operas that demanded both precision and innocence. For a time, his voice was his destiny. Then, like all fragile things, it vanished. When it did, the boy who had once been celebrated for sound turned towards silence, and the moving image became his new language. The 1,950 seconds British film industry welcomed him in small, fleeting roles. He was no matinee idol, his features were sharp, his stare almost confrontational. But there was something cinematic about that tension, an intensity waiting to be used. Directors noticed. Audiences didn't, not yet. Then came Blow Up in 1966, and everything changed. The world saw him not as an actor, but as a mirror. His portrayal of Thomas, the photographer who believes he's captured a murder, turned disillusionment into art. He embodied the restless spirit of swinging London, the freedom, the vanity, the void beneath the glamour. With that single role, Hemmings became immortalized. His name filled magazines, his face defined fashion. He was no longer the boy from Britain's choir, he was the man who embodied the paradox of modern fame, adored, misunderstood, and already beginning to disappear. Fame came at David Hemmings like a flood, dazzling, intoxicating, impossible to control. One moment he was a rising actor, the next, he was the face of London. The press called him a modern rebel, a man who represented the restless intelligence of youth. But behind the style and the swagger, Hemmings was quietly losing his footing. Hollywood welcomed him with open arms and hidden expectations. They wanted the image, not the individual. The cool stare, the sharp jawline, the mod icon who could sell sophistication without speaking. But David was never built for conformity. He rejected safe scripts, argued with producers, and refused to repeat himself. His independence, once admired, became a liability. The cameras that had adored him turned elsewhere. At home, the noise of celebrity gave way to silence. His marriage to actress Gail Hunnicutt, once the dream of 1,960 seconds glamour, began to fracture under the pressure of distance, fame, and fatigue. Friends described him as brilliant but volatile, capable of great laughter one moment and deep withdrawal the next. In interviews, he spoke with biting honesty. "I wasn't interested in being a star," he said once. "I was interested in the work. But the work vanished before I did." Fame had turned him into a ghost of his own reflection, admired, misunderstood, and slowly fading from the frame that once made him eternal. By the early 1,970 seconds, the rhythm that had carried David Hemmings through the golden years of Blow Up began to falter. The world that once hailed him as its icon had shifted. The colors of the 60s had bled into gray. The new decade wanted fresh faces, simpler stories, and less ambiguity. Hemmings, with his defiant intellect and unpredictable energy, no longer fit the frame. Rather than chase what was gone, he turned inward behind the camera, where he could craft meaning without being seen. His directorial debut, Running Scared, 1972, felt personal. A quiet exploration of friendship and mortality, perhaps a reflection of his own fears. The film wasn't a commercial success, but it revealed something deeper, a man confronting the echo of his own past. He continued with Just a Gigolo, 1978, a film starring David Bowie that mirrored his own fading stardom, beautiful, flawed, and out of time. Hollywood moved on. Critics were harsh. But Hemmings kept creating, directing television and small films. For him, art was not a ladder anymore, it was a lifeline. There was no scandal, no collapse, no single downfall. His fame didn't explode, it evaporated. Slowly, gently, until one day the man who had once defined rebellion became almost invisible. And yet, in that obscurity, there was a strange dignity. The actor who once burned with the need to be seen found peace in being unseen, a witness again, just as he began. The boy who had captured the sound of beauty now captured its silence. In his later years, David Hemmings no longer belonged to the myth of the 60s. The sharp-suited rebel of blow-up had become a quiet craftsman, a man who worked not for fame but for fulfillment. While his contemporaries clung to nostalgia, Hemmings evolved. He directed television, acted in supporting roles, and rediscovered what it meant to create without the burden of recognition. Series like Magnum, P.I., The A-Team, and Airwolf became his second home. There was no glamour, no adoration, just steady work, a crew that respected him, and a man finally at ease within his craft. Colleagues described him as calm, generous, even mischievous, with none of the vanity that had once defined him. The spotlight no longer haunted him. It had become a distant echo. Then came Blessed, 2003, a low-budget thriller shot in Romania. Hemmings, cast as a priest, approached the role with quiet passion, reflective, disciplined, serene. On set, he was full of life, joking between takes, guiding the younger crew. And then, one evening, the scene simply ended. A mysterious passing, peaceful and sudden. He was gone before anyone could call cut. The next morning, the set remained untouched. His script lay open, the pages trembling slightly under the breeze from the window. No one moved it. No one spoke. It was as if time itself had paused to honor him, the man who once froze life through a camera's eye, now captured in stillness forever. History remembers David Hemmings in fragments, a flash of a lens, a frame of film, a voice fading into silence. But the fragments endure. His work in Blow Up remains one of cinema's great enigmas, a performance that turned detachment into poetry, mystery into philosophy. Generations later, audiences still revisit that moment when he lifts the camera, uncertain whether he's photographing truth or illusion. Yet his true legacy lies in his evolution. He didn't cling to fame, he outgrew it. As a director, he guided stories with a steady, unpretentious hand. In Deep Red, 1975, he brought psychological depth to horror. In television, he shaped characters and rhythms that quietly influenced the next wave of storytellers. He never sought to reclaim his past, he built something new from its shadow. When his memoir, Blow Up and Other Exaggerations, was published after his passing, readers found a voice filled with wit, honesty, and humility. He spoke of fame as both a privilege and a trap, something beautiful, but never enough. In those pages, the boy soprano, the photographer, the director, and the man finally converge into one truth. He was always searching not for fame, but for meaning. And perhaps that's why his face still lingers, not frozen in the past, but alive in memory. Fame made David Hemmings a reflection of his time, but it was solitude that made him timeless. His story isn't about loss, it's about transformation. He began as a voice, became an image, and ended as an idea. That art only matters when it reveals the human beneath it. He lived between the click of a camera and the silence that follows it, that brief, trembling space where truth hides. The boy who sang purity into cathedral walls, the man who stared into the heart of illusion, and the artist who vanished quietly into his craft, all of them are still there, layered like film exposed to too much light. In the end, The star who faded before the credits rolled was not gone, he simply stepped out of the frame. Because some lives don't end when the light fades. They live on, whispered between reels, waiting for someone to press play again. What image of David Hemmings lingers for you, the daring photographer lost in blow-up, or the quiet artist who found peace behind the lens? His journey reminds us that the light which defines us can also blind us, and that meaning often lives in the shadows we leave behind. If his story spoke to you, share your memory. Leave a comment. Keep his name, his work, and his truth alive in the conversation.